back to Visual Design for Multimedia. We're working in After Effects, animating, and now I'm going to give you a quick lesson on how to use pre-comps, also known as nested compositions, but how to kind of like pre-comp some different layers and objects into a composition, and then you can control them inside of another composition. And it gets really powerful. You get these child-parent relationships that are going on. So right now, in my last lesson, I was showing folks how to use some of the like animation presets. So I'm also going to go ahead and just bring in a shape in here, and I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and like drag it in. Oops, I didn't actually mean to do that as a mask. Let me click off of it. I want to just have a shape layer. And I'm going to close up my presets here real quick. And let's go ahead and give this... Actually, don't want to have a fill on this, so I'm going to go ahead and... Bear with me. For some reason, I'm forgetting how to change my fill. Usually, this is why I would prefer to... Actually, you know what? I'm just going to bring this into the background. Cool. Ooh, that's intense. Let's go with a different color at least. Let's go with... Sure, let's go with a magenta-y color. Okay, cool. So I've got this shape in the background. Maybe I'll add a little bit of a stroke to it. Let's go a little more. And maybe I'll go ahead and add another preset to this one. Let's go ahead and do a blah, 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 blah. Let's do a blur. Actually, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do off of one of these shape presets. Oh, I'm curious what the box swarm does. That looks kind of fun. Okay, nifty. So I've got this animation going on, I've got this little blur, and I've got this box thing going on with my layer in the background. Maybe I'll make that a little bit bigger. Kind of have this fun effect going on in the background. And I'm going to stretch this out so I have about 4 seconds of preview. Okay, cool. So I've got this, I've got my text, and I've got that background going. Actually, I'm going to bring that back down to 2 seconds because I don't want it just going forever. Now, what if I wanted to take these two objects as a group and have them like move around or animate them separately? Well, you know, I could try to like, you know, animate the position of each of these and keep them in sync, but I could also just select both layers, right-click on it, and do what's called a pre-compose. And I could give it a title, so I could give it like text and background. And right now it says move all attributes into the new composition. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And if I go back up to my project window here, you'll now see I have another composition called text and background. And you know, it's still going to play right now. It's just they've been folded up inside of this. If I want to get into the contents, I can just double click that, and then you'll see I get another composition that opens up in my timeline on these little tabs. There's kind of an original one back here too from one that I was working with before. So I now have, it's kind of like going in and out of, there's the text and background pre-comp, and then if I go into it, here's those layers that are still there that I can individually control. But now back out in this parent composition, I can actually take the whole pre-comp and I can animate it. Like I could come down here and just do something really simple where I transform its position, right? So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Maybe I have the whole thing come in from below. So I'll set a position here, and maybe I'll put a fade on it as well, 0. And then I'll come up to about maybe like the just before the 2-second mark there, and I'll go ahead and bring it into position so it's back where it was, and then I'll bring the opacity up. So it's just really easy. If I animate that now I'm animating the group or the pre-comp with the contents being animated inside of it separately. So it's just a really nice organizational tool As your animations are going to get more complex, particularly those of you that are doing animated infographics, you're going to have a lot of moving pieces, and it's a lot easier to kind of be able to fade in a whole section of a design by turning it into a pre-comp, and then being able to do these things like animating in a whole group of elements because they've been put inside of a pre-comp, right? So these child-parent relationships can get really powerful. Another example, I've had a lot of people ask me about kind of almost doing some character rigging, and there's tons of plugins out there that allow you to do way more complex riggings. But if you want to do kind of like a paper doll style thing, I can go ahead into Illustrator. I mean, I could make this in After Effects as well, but I'll go ahead into Illustrator here and create a new document. And I'm just going to create a very simple little form real quick. So I'm going to create a head. So I'm just a lot faster in Illustrator than After Effects limited stuff. So there's my head, and I'm going to keep my layers panel open because I want to be able to control these on different layers. So then I'll do a body. Let's do a rounded rectangle for the body. And I'll keep with rounded rectangles. I'll do another layer here. And then I'll just duplicate that over to the other side. But I'm going to cut it and put it on its own layer. Paste in place. And then I'll draw in a couple of legs. This is the simplest character ever, right? Whoop. Let's take that off, put it on its own layer. And then we'll just duplicate that layer and move it over. All right, cool. And just so we know what's what, let's go ahead and put this as head, body. I think that's the left leg, right leg, right arm, left arm. Cool. And I'm going to save this to my desktop. Okay. Let's hide Illustrator. Go back to After Effects. I'm going to create a new composition, and I'm going to keep this about 30 seconds. Let's actually just put this at 1080p. There we go. Cool. And now I'm going to go and file and import that character. And I don't want them merged. I don't want them as footage. I'm going to actually bring this in as a composition, maintain layer size. And now my character is already kind of pre-comped as one big massive character. So I'm going to bring it down into here. And there's my master character, right? So if I want to animate him, I can obviously animate this character. But if I double click it, then I have all of these fun things right inside. So I've got my arms, my legs, my head, and my feet. And now I can go ahead and animate each of these separately, but I can also move my character. If I had hands on the ends of these, then I would make another comp with the arm and the hands. Maybe I'll add those in after we're done. But right off the bat, now that I'm in here, I can use my pan behind tool and move some of these anchor points so that they're where I want them to hinge from, right? And then same thing here. We don't want them to hinge from the center. We want them to hinge from the end of the leg, just like a joint would. And even on the head here, if I want to tilt it or do anything, I'm going to bring it kind of down to there. All right, cool. So now I can do all sorts of animations. You know, on my left arm, you know, I'm going to go ahead and add some hands in. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to a nice blue that's close enough. Actually, let's do the color picker and hit OK. And I'll go ahead and add a hand. Let's change that down to 0. And we'll go ahead and put that over here as well on the right side. So now that we have these shape layers, whoop, I didn't want to do them both on the same one. We'll go ahead and just call this, let's rename it, left hand, and copy and paste it, and then call that one right hand. Cool. And let's move that down with the right arm. Okay. So now I could take these two layers and pre-comp those and pre-compose it. and call it left arm and hand. And same thing here on the right side. We'll pre-comp those and call this right arm and hand. Something happened with that. What's going on? Oh, I'd ever moved the right hand over. That's why. Let's go ahead and put that over there. All right, cool. Let's do that again. Right click, pre-compose, right arm and hand. Okay, cool. So now I have both of those, right? So if I click on this, I want to go ahead and do my pan behind tool again, and I'm going to go ahead and move that so that this is my left arm where I still want it to hinge from. And then on my right arm, we'll move that over here. And right now, those compositions I probably should have made a little bit smaller, because if I do try to animate those, they're still just as big as the overall guy is right now. So when I go into my left arm, let's go ahead and go to composition settings. And just right now, it's still a little bit big. It's 612 by, it'll just make it easier to be able to manipulate it if that composition isn't so large. So like right now, if I click on these, it looks like the left arm, let's take a look at it, is only like, let's do like 50 by 250 or 60 by 250, I think. So let's do composition settings on this. And let's change this down to 60 by 250. Whoop, wrong dimensions. Composition settings here. 250 by 60. And we'll just move that within there. Whoop, grab them both. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little higher. Well, we'll leave it for there right now. And now if we go back out to the character, all we got to do is move that back in position. And you can just see we have a much more reasonable sized subcomp to work with. And now I can move that axis point again back where I want it. It's just going to make it a whole lot easier to be able to rotate that and position it and do all the different things that we want to be able to do to it. Because if I unfold that right now and say I rotate it, now I have a nice arm that's going to rotate, right? This one, which is so large, if I go to rotate the right arm, it still might rotate okay, but actually it does okay. I guess I didn't really have to go through that. It's actually still rotating from that axis point just fine. It just kind of looks weird being big, so whatever is easiest for you. But as you can see, now I can come into any of these right leg, left leg, transform, and I can go to my right arm and I can rotate it and go back and forth. Obviously, if I needed to have a knee joint, I would have added another element to that leg. And my left leg, if I transform that, I can rotate even the head, which is down here. If I transform that, I can still rotate that back and forth because I set the axis and get a little tilt to it. But then, in the subcomps, if I go to the left arm again, I can also make it so that the hand is on its own and can be rotated, right? So I can move that guy and move its, get back to it here. It's way off. Let's move it like right over here. And then the left arm can be transformed and rotated as well on its own. So I can kind of tilt that back and forth. Probably need a slightly different hand. And actually, this is where having that bigger composition, I made it a little too tight. So I'm going to go ahead and just make that like 500 by 200. Just make this a little bit bigger to work with, right? And now I can, when I do rotate that hand, I've got plenty of room to play with. Maybe I want to actually like bring that out to the end for a little bit more flexibility. So I'm going to set a keyframe on this, one there, and then I'm going to come out to half a second and rotate it back, and then a little bit further and rotate it downward, and then one more and rotate it back. So now it's like my left hand is kind of doing a little wave back and forth, right? And as I come through here, Let's go ahead and position. Because I changed the size on that left arm, I got to move it back into position where I want it. And I'm actually going to have to readjust that axis point as well to where I want it. It's a little off. There we go. Cool. So now, as I go through, you'll see that animation that's going on inside the pre-comp is doing its thing back and forth. And I could also make it move the right arm. So I could kind of take the position here and rotate it up, set a keyframe, and then move forward a little bit and move it down. And then maybe have it move back up again. And then if I come back out to the main comp, where I have the whole thing, looks like that body comp, I'm getting chopped off just a little bit. So this comp I'd want to make just a little bit bigger as well. Let's go ahead and make this like 1000 by 800. There we go. That should give us some room when we come back out to here. Now I can see that I've got the hand waving and the arms separately. And now I can come in here and move my character around if I wanted to. You know, I could have them here and set a position, and then come out to the 1 second mark and have them over here. And all this is like one animation inside of another. First I have the hand waving, then I have the arm waving, and then I have the body moving. And this is all from the idea of nested comps. So the character's inside of this comp, and then all the arms and legs are inside of this comp, and the torso and the head, and then just the left arm and hand are inside of this comp. So you get this parent-child relationship, nested comps, subcomps, pre-comps. There's all this terminology, but really it's like nested compositions. So I hope that helps you as you're starting to organize your objects and just give you another layer of ability to animate things in different levels and have that ultimate control. As always, thanks for tuning in, and reach out if you have any questions at all. Thank you.